True strength is not in overpowering someone else, but in mastering yourself. Number 1. Pause before you react. In every confrontation, the greatest battle is not with the other person, it is with yourself, with the urge to defend, to retaliate, to immediately prove your point and not let the other person's words cut into you without a counterstrike. And yet, the power of calm begins in that exact space where you pause before reacting, because in that pause you reclaim your control, you buy back time, and you step out of the emotional fire long enough to see with clarity instead of blindness. I learned this lesson not from books or theories, but from a painful real-life encounter that could have destroyed years of trust, when I was once confronted by a family member during a heated argument about money, and they hurled words that cut deep. Words meant to shame and belittle. Words that under normal circumstances would have provoked me into shouting back, escalating into a storm that might have fractured our bond forever. But something in me whispered, "Pause." And so I did, not because I wanted to, but because I knew if I spoke in that moment, it would not be my truth speaking, it would be my anger, my pride, my ego. And I remembered all the times in the past when reacting too quickly had left me with regrets I could not erase. And in that pause, something miraculous happened. I began to hear not just the words being spoken, but the pain behind them. I saw the fear, the frustration, the disappointment that had nothing to do with me personally. And as I breathed deeply, I realized that my silence was not weakness, it was strength. Because it gave me the space to choose my response instead of being a prisoner to my emotions. And when I finally spoke, I did so softly, with steadiness, with intention. And the temperature of the whole confrontation shifted, the shouting softened, the anger deflated. And what could have been a devastating blow to our relationship transformed into an opportunity for healing and understanding. And that day I learned this truth: the pause is not passive, the pause is power. Because it is in the pause where you decide whether you will be mastered by your emotions or whether you will master them. And this principle is not limited to family disputes. It applies everywhere: on the streets, when someone cuts you off in traffic; in the office, when a colleague disrespects you in front of others; in friendships, when misunderstandings threaten to rupture years of closeness; in every place where confrontation brews. The person who pauses is the person who owns the battlefield. Because anger is contagious, but so is calm. And the pause acts like a shield, a protective layer between your inner peace and the chaos outside. And the longer you cultivate it, the stronger you become. Because instead of being reactive, you grow responsive. Instead of being impulsive, you become intentional. And one day you'll look back and realize that most of the battles you thought you had to fight were never worth fighting at all. They were just tests to see if you could pause, breathe, and rise above the storm. So, whenever you feel your blood boiling, whenever you feel your pride pushing you to speak immediately, remember this: silence for a few seconds may just save you years of regret, and calmness for a few moments may just preserve relationships that anger would have burned to ashes. And ultimately, the pause is not about suppressing your emotions, it is about mastering them. It is about saying to yourself, "I am in charge of me, not the chaos, not the noise, not the confrontation." And that is where real strength is found. Number 2, control your body language. When confrontation strikes, it is not only your words that speak, it is your body, your face, your posture, your eyes, your very presence that shouts louder than anything your mouth could say. And most people don't realize that in a heated moment, body language becomes the most powerful weapon or the most dangerous liability, because anger leaks through clenched fists, tensed jaws, rolling eyes, and sharp movements, and those signals pour gasoline on the fire even before a word leaves your lips. But when you learn to control your body language, when you train yourself to stay still, to breathe deeply, to hold steady eye contact without aggression, to keep your hands open and relaxed rather than tightened into fists, you send a message that you are not a threat, that you are grounded, that you will not be dragged into chaos. And this single adjustment often changes the entire trajectory of the conflict, because people mirror energy, and your calm physical presence becomes an anchor in their storm. I witnessed this lesson in action years ago in a crowded marketplace, when I accidentally brushed past a man who turned on me with fiery eyes and accusing words, blaming me for being careless and disrespectful. His voice rising, his arms flailing, his chest puffing as if he were ready for a fight, and in that moment, the old me would have mirrored his stance, squared shoulders, raised voice, confrontational posture, but something in me chose differently. I stood tall but relaxed. I kept my hands at my sides in an open gesture. I softened my expression, and instead of glaring back, I met his gaze steadily with eyes that communicated peace. And a strange thing happened. His fury began to falter. His body language started to lose its edge. His voice lowered. And within moments, what could have become a dangerous confrontation in a crowded street melted into an awkward laugh and a muttered, "Forget it," as he walked away. And I realized then that it wasn't my words that de-escalated the moment, it was my body, my silent but powerful message that I was not there to fight. This is why mastering your body language is vital in any confrontation, because even if your heart is racing and your mind is boiling, your body can act as a stabilizer, sending signals of control not only to the other person but also back to your own nervous system, calming you from the outside in. And this is something you can practice. Start by noticing how you carry yourself when you're angry. Do your shoulders tense? Do your hands ball up? Do you point fingers? Do you invade the other person's space? Because awareness is the first step to mastery. And once you become conscious, you can replace those aggressive patterns with deliberate calmness. Stand upright but not rigid. Keep your arms loose. Maintain steady but non-threatening eye contact. Breathe slowly and keep your tone measured, because your body becomes a message of strength without aggression, authority without arrogance, calm without weakness. And the beauty of this skill is that it doesn't just protect you, it disarms the other, because confrontation thrives on resistance, but it starves when met with composure. And when you learn to let your body speak calmness, you don't just de-escalate conflicts, you build respect, because people remember the one who didn't flinch, the one who didn't lose composure, the one who stayed rooted like a mountain while the storm raged. And in a world where most are quick to react, the person who controls their body language becomes unforgettable, because they embody the rare kind of discipline that transforms tension into resolution. Number 3. Listen to understand, not to win. The most destructive mistake people make in confrontations is that they listen only to prepare their counterattack, not to truly hear. And in doing so, they turn every exchange into a competition rather than a conversation. Because when you listen to win, you're not listening at all, you're only waiting for your turn to strike. But when you listen to understand, everything changes. Because you stop fueling the fire and start uncovering the real roots of the other person's anger, fear, or frustration. And more often than not, you discover that beneath the harsh words lies a pain that simply wants to be acknowledged. I learned this painfully in my early career when a colleague accused me during a team meeting of not pulling my weight, throwing me under the bus in front of everyone. And my ego immediately wanted to fire back, to defend myself, to make him look small for daring to embarrass me. But something in me said, "Wait, listen." And so I held back my rebuttal and simply asked him to explain what he meant. And as he spoke, his words were sharp at first, but beneath them I began to hear something different. He wasn't angry at me. He was overwhelmed, buried under a workload he didn't know how to manage. And he felt abandoned, unsupported, and unseen. And his attack on me was really a cry for help that he didn't know how to voice respectfully. And by listening not just to his words, but to his emotions, I was able to respond not with anger but with understanding, offering support instead of defensiveness. And that very moment shifted our dynamic from enemies to allies, because he realized I wasn't against him, I was willing to hear him, and in turn he softened, apologized, and we built trust instead of rivalry. That experience taught me something I will never forget. Most confrontations don't need you to be louder, they need you to be wiser. And wisdom is found in listening deeply, in giving the other person the dignity of being heard, because often people escalate when they feel dismissed or ignored. And the simple act of leaning in, maintaining eye contact, nodding, and truly listening can de-escalate what shouting never could. But listening to understand requires humility, because your ego will scream to interrupt, to defend, to protect your pride. And it takes strength to silence that inner urge and instead say, "Tell me more. Help me understand. What do you mean by that?" Questions that invite clarity instead of conflict. And when you do this, you'll often discover that the confrontation was never about you personally, but about the other person's wounds, pressures, or insecurities, and the moment they feel heard, their armor begins to fall. Because listening is healing, it is disarming, it is the bridge that turns adversaries into humans again, reminding both sides that this is not a war to be won, but a connection to be preserved. And the truth is, listening doesn't make you weak, it makes you powerful, because it allows you to control the direction of the storm without even raising your voice. It makes you the calm center others can gravitate toward, and in a world obsessed with winning arguments, the rare individual who listens to understand rises above noise and earns respect that no argument could ever achieve. For it is not victory in words that leaves a lasting mark, but the quiet strength of someone who cared enough to truly hear. Number 4. Lower your tone, lower the fire. In the heat of confrontation, tone is often more powerful than the actual words spoken, because people rarely remember the exact phrases you used, but they never forget how your voice made them feel. And the truth is that when tempers flare, volume rises, pitch sharpens, and suddenly two people aren't communicating anymore, they're colliding, both trying to be heard by shouting over the other. But what few realize is that you don't win in those moments by being louder. You win by being quieter. For lowering your tone is like pouring water on fire. It slows the flames. It takes away oxygen. It creates space for reason to return. And I learned this during a late-night argument with a close friend years ago, when emotions ran high and accusations were thrown across the room like daggers. And every word out of his mouth came like a challenge for me to retaliate louder, sharper, harsher. And for a while I fell into that trap, matching fire with fire, until our voices echoed so loudly that neighbors knocked on the door. But then something inside me broke through the noise and said, "Stop, lower your voice." And I did. I deliberately softened my tone. I spoke slower, calmer, almost whispering, compared to the rage just seconds before. And an incredible thing happened. His voice, still raised, suddenly felt out of place. His anger bounced off the quietness and began to lose momentum. And little by little, his tone softened to match mine, until we were no longer shouting, but speaking. No longer enemies, but two hurt people trying to understand each other. That moment taught me a life-altering lesson. Tone sets the rhythm of the confrontation, and if you escalate, they escalate. But if you de-escalate, most people subconsciously follow, because human beings are wired to mirror what they see and hear, and the calmness in your tone becomes a mirror that reflects back to them the option of peace. And this doesn't just apply to personal relationships, it works everywhere, whether in the workplace with an angry customer, on the street with a frustrated stranger, or at home with a loved one. Your tone can shift the entire atmosphere, like a conductor who slows the tempo of a chaotic orchestra until the music softens into harmony. And the key is intentional practice. Because lowering your tone in the middle of confrontation doesn't come naturally. Your ego will want to prove its strength by volume, but real strength is proven in restraint, in the ability to stay composed when provoked. And to do this, you must remind yourself, if I raise my voice, I lose control. If I lower my voice, I regain it. And over time, this discipline becomes your secret weapon, because people don't expect it, they expect you to fight back, to roar louder. But when you whisper calm into chaos, it disarms, confuses, and then softens even the angriest hearts, leaving you not only in control of yourself, but in control of the entire confrontation. And what's more, it earns respect, because anyone can scream, but only the wise know how to speak with quiet authority. And it is that quietness that makes people stop, listen, and remember long after the moment has passed. Number 5. Don't take it personally. One of the hardest but most liberating lessons you can ever learn in life is this: what people say or do in the heat of confrontation is almost never about you. It is about them. their stress, their pain, their frustration, their unmet expectations, and yet most of us fall into the trap of taking every harsh word like a personal attack, letting it pierce us, define us, and dictate our reaction. And in doing so, we hand over our peace to someone else's storm. But the truth is, when you stop taking things personally, you reclaim your inner freedom, because you begin to see beyond the surface of the words and recognize the deeper reality that people project their inner battles outward. I learned this the hard way when, during one of my first jobs, a manager lashed out at me in front of an entire team over a mistake that wasn't even mine. His words sharp, cutting, humiliating, and I remember feeling my blood boil, my chest tighten, and my mind racing with the thought, how dare he disrespect me like this? And I wanted to snap back, to humiliate him in return, but something stopped me. Something whispered, this isn't about you. And as I looked closer, I saw a man drowning in pressure from his own bosses, exhausted from long nights, fearful of failure, and I realized that his outburst was not a reflection of my worth, but of his own struggle. And by not taking it personally, I saved myself from unnecessary pain and from reacting in ways that would have only worsened the situation. Instead, I calmly clarified the issue later, and not only did the truth come to light, but my composure earned me respect from colleagues who saw that I could hold myself together under fire, and that day I discovered a principle that has guided me ever since. People will say things in anger, in fear, in frustration that have nothing to do with who you are, and if you carry their words into your heart, you will bleed from wounds that were never meant for you. But if you let their words fall to the ground without taking root in your spirit, you stay free, you stay calm, you stay whole, and the confrontation passes without leaving scars. The real power lies in perspective, in asking yourself during conflict, is this truly about me, or is this about what they are going through? Because 9 times out of 10, it is the latter. And once you know this, you can respond with empathy rather than ego, with steadiness rather than defensiveness, and with wisdom rather than wounded pride. And this doesn't mean you allow disrespect or tolerate abuse. It means you don't internalize someone else's storm as your identity. You protect your peace while addressing the situation firmly but calmly. And over time, this mindset becomes armor, shielding you from unnecessary emotional wounds. Because every confrontation becomes less about your value and more about understanding the hidden battles of others. And when you no longer take things personally, you walk through life lighter, freer, calmer. Because nothing anyone says can shake you from the truth of who you really are. Number 6. Choose questions over accusations. In confrontation, the easiest path is accusation, to point fingers, to say, you always, you never, this is your fault. Because accusation feels like defense, like strength. But in reality, it only hardens the walls between you and the other person, making them dig deeper into their position and fueling more resistance. The wiser path, though harder in the moment, is to replace accusations with questions. Because questions don't just challenge, they invite. They open doors. They make people reflect rather than react. And that simple shift can turn a fight into a dialogue. I learned this in one of the most difficult conversations of my life, when a longtime friend betrayed my trust by sharing something deeply personal. I had told him in confidence, and when I found out, my heart was burning with anger, my tongue itching to hurl accusations. How could you do this to me? Why would you betray me? You don't deserve my trust. And those words were already climbing up my throat, when suddenly, I paused and instead asked him, help me understand. Why did you feel the need to share that with someone else? And just that single question changed the entire atmosphere. Because instead of putting him on trial and forcing him into defense, it drew out an explanation I would never have expected. He broke down and admitted that he had been struggling with his own loneliness, craving connection, and in his weakness, he tried to bond with someone else by sharing my story. And though his action was wrong, my question allowed me to see the brokenness behind it, to see not just what he did but why he did it. And that gave us space to talk, to rebuild, to forgive, something that would never have happened if I had gone in with accusations. because he would have met my fire with fire and the friendship would have turned to ashes. And this principle applies everywhere, not just with friends, but with family, colleagues, even strangers. If someone is late, instead of snapping, "You never respect my time," ask, "Was something holding you up?" If someone raises their voice, instead of accusing, "You're attacking me," ask, "What's really upsetting you right now?" Because questions shift the dynamic from enemy to listener, from walls to bridges. And when you ask with genuine curiosity rather than sarcasm, you disarm tension and invite honesty. This doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior, but it means you choose the higher ground, one that seeks resolution rather than escalation. And that choice makes you powerful, because while accusations ignite battles, questions uncover truths, and truth has the power to heal what anger only destroys. And the more you practice this, the more you'll see that questions not only calm others, they calm you too, because they force you to step out of your ego, to shift from reaction to reflection. And in that space, confrontation loses its fire, and you walk away not with regrets of things said in rage, but with the quiet strength of knowing you handled the storm with wisdom. Number 7, detach emotion from the outcome. One of the greatest traps in any confrontation is tying your sense of worth, dignity, or peace to the outcome of the argument. Because when you do this, you fight not just for understanding, but for validation. And suddenly the confrontation becomes a battlefield. Your ego cannot afford to lose, but the truth is, the outcome is never fully in your control. What you can control is how you carry yourself, how you speak, how you choose to walk away with your integrity intact. And detaching your emotions from the outcome is the secret to staying calm, because it frees you from the need to win and allows you to focus on what truly matters, protecting your peace. I experienced this deeply during a business negotiation when I was passionately trying to convince a client to adopt my proposal, and the discussion turned confrontational, with them dismissing my points, pushing back aggressively, and my emotions flared because I felt that their rejection was a rejection of me, of my hard work, of my intelligence. And in that mindset, I fought harder, my voice sharpened, my tone grew defensive, and the more emotionally attached I became to winning, the more I lost control, until finally, the deal slipped through my fingers completely, and I walked away, not only defeated but drained, ashamed of how much I had allowed my ego to dictate my behavior. But that painful experience became a turning point, because I realized that the real mistake wasn't losing the deal, it was losing myself in the process. And in later confrontations, I chose differently, reminding myself before entering any heated discussion, I cannot control their decision, but I can control my dignity, my calm, my presence. And with that mindset, I began to approach conflicts with less desperation and more composure. And ironically, the less emotionally attached I became to winning, the more persuasive and effective I became, because calmness carries more weight than desperation, and people trust those who can speak without fear of loss. Detaching from the outcome doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you stop clinging. You stop letting your peace rise and fall on whether someone agrees with you, apologizes to you, or validates you, and instead, you root your peace in yourself, in the knowledge that your worth is not determined by this single confrontation. And when you practice this, you begin to see that many battles you once thought you had to win no longer even matter. Because winning isn't about walking away with a trophy of victory, it's about walking away without regret, without shame, without having lost yourself to anger or ego. And the paradox is that when you no longer need to win at all costs, you often win in the ways that matter most, by preserving respect, by protecting relationships, and by proving to yourself that you are bigger than the storm. So the next time you find yourself in confrontation, remember, the outcome belongs to circumstances, but your calm belongs to you. And if you must lose one, let it be the outcome, not yourself. Number 8. Use strategic silence. Silence in confrontation is not weakness, it is strategy, it is presence, it is the art of refusing to feed the flames while allowing the fire to burn itself out, because when words are weapons, silence becomes a shield. And though many fear silence because they believe it makes them look powerless, the truth is the opposite. Silence demonstrates supreme control, for it says, "I will not be dragged into chaos on your terms. I choose my timing." I discovered this lesson not from a textbook, but from a moment of personal humiliation that could have destroyed me had I reacted wrongly. During a community gathering, a man stood up and publicly criticized me, accusing me of arrogance, incompetence, and selfishness. His voice echoing across the hall as others turned to watch, and every muscle in me tensed. Every instinct urged me to stand, to defend myself, to hurl words back and expose his flaws before the crowd, but something inside whispered, "Be still." And so I remained silent, meeting his words with calm eyes, letting the weight of the moment hang in the air without rushing to fill it with noise. And as seconds stretched into what felt like an eternity, something remarkable happened. His words began to lose their sharpness. His voice faltered as he realized I wasn't giving him the fight he expected. The audience's attention shifted. Some even looked at him with discomfort, as his anger seemed more and more out of place against my quiet presence. And by the time I finally spoke slowly, measured, with just a few words of clarity, the confrontation was over before it could truly begin. And later, people told me my silence had spoken louder than any defense I could have mounted. That day taught me that silence is not emptiness. It is power. It is restraint. It is wisdom disguised as stillness. Because when you withhold words, you deny the other person ammunition to continue their attack. You give yourself space to think, and you force them to face the echo of their own voice. Strategic silence can de-escalate where arguments only escalate. It can reset the emotional temperature of the room, and it can turn the tide of confrontation in your favor without you even raising your voice. But using it requires courage, because the ego will scream to defend itself, to be heard, to respond immediately. And yet the strongest person is not the one who shouts the fastest, but the one who can remain silent the longest until words carry weight again. And this doesn't mean you never respond. It means you choose your response with timing, letting silence disarm, letting the moment breathe, and then speaking with precision rather than impulse. For silence sharpens words like a whetstone sharpens a blade. And when you do speak after silence, people listen, because you have taught them that your voice is not cheap, it is deliberate, it is intentional. So the next time someone throws anger at you, resist the urge to react instantly, pause, breathe, let silence stand in front of you like armor, and you'll find that often, silence resolves more than speech ever could, because silence is not the absence of power, it is its highest expression. Number 9. Ground yourself physically. When confrontation erupts, the first battlefield is not outside, but inside your racing heartbeat, your shallow breathing, your clenched fists, your tightened jaw. And if you do not learn to ground yourself physically, your body will drag your mind into panic and anger before you even realize it. But the moment you anchor your body, you anchor your mind, because physiology and psychology are inseparable. The most practical way to stay calm in conflict is to literally ground yourself. Plant your feet firmly on the floor, breathe deeply into your belly, roll your shoulders back, relax your jaw, and feel the weight of your body, holding steady like a mountain that cannot be moved by the wind of someone else's anger. I learned this powerfully during a confrontation with a superior at work who accused me of mishandling a project in front of the team, his voice sharp, his presence intimidating. And in that moment, my entire body betrayed me, my chest tightened, my palms sweated, my breath became rapid, and I could feel the heat of anger rising to my face, ready to explode into words I would regret. But something in me remembered the advice of a mentor who once said, "When you feel attacked, don't fight with words first, ground yourself, own your space, let your body remind your mind that you are in control." And so, in the middle of that storm, I consciously planted both feet into the ground, inhaled slowly, let my shoulders drop, and simply breathed. And with every breath, I felt my heartbeat slow, my voice steady, my mind clear. And when I finally responded, I did not sound defensive or panicked. I sounded calm, measured, unshaken, and the entire room felt the shift. Even my superior's tone softened, because he expected me to react emotionally. But instead, he was confronted with composure that came not from clever words, but from a grounded presence. That moment revealed to me a truth I've never forgotten. When your body is steady, your spirit is steady, and grounding is the bridge that carries you through the chaos of confrontation without letting it consume you. This practice is not complicated, yet it is profoundly powerful. Before you speak, notice your breath. Unclench your hands, feel the stability beneath your feet, and tell yourself, I am rooted, I cannot be moved by this storm. And watch how quickly the fire inside begins to settle. Because the reality is, confrontation is like a wave crashing against you, and if you are ungrounded, you'll be knocked over. But if you are rooted, the wave passes and you remain standing, untouched at your core. Grounding yourself physically is the reminder that though you cannot control the other person's anger, you can control your presence. And that control is the difference between reacting in fear and responding in strength, between escalating the fight and dissolving it, and ultimately, between losing yourself and finding your highest calm in the middle of the storm. Number 10. Exit with grace if needed. The greatest strength in any confrontation is not always found in winning the argument, raising your voice, or standing your ground until the last word has been spoken, but in recognizing when the wisest and most powerful thing you can do is to exit with grace. Because true mastery of self is not about proving to others that you are right. It is about protecting your peace, and sometimes walking away is not an act of weakness, but of dignity, wisdom, and unmatched strength. I remember vividly a time when I had a heated dispute with a close friend, someone I valued deeply, and the disagreement spiraled into raised voices, cutting words, and emotional wounds being carved open. And while every part of me wanted to fight harder, to push my point across and force him to understand, I suddenly realized in the middle of that storm that nothing good was being built, only walls of resentment and misunderstanding. And I remembered something an old mentor once told me. You don't always have to win the battle to win the war. Sometimes peace is the greater victory. So I took a long breath, let my anger sink into silence, and instead of firing back another round of words, I gently said, I think we need space to breathe. And I walked away, not in defeat, not in bitterness, but with intention, because I understood that leaving the conversation at that moment was not running from it, but saving it, protecting both our dignity and the relationship itself. Hours later, when emotions had cooled, we were able to sit down and truly hear each other, to reconcile without the noise of anger clouding our minds. And that experience taught me that exiting gracefully is not about giving up. It is about refusing to be dragged into a place that dishonors who you are. It is knowing that silence sometimes carries more power than speech, that leaving sometimes speaks louder than staying, and that the person who walks away from unnecessary chaos is often the one who stands tallest. This practice is not always easy, because our ego screams at us to stay and fight, to not let the other person have the last word, but the soul whispers something higher. Protect your peace, choose grace, let time and truth do what anger never can. And the moment you learn to listen to that whisper, you unlock a kind of freedom in confrontations that very few ever master. The truth is, not every confrontation deserves your full energy, not every battle is yours to fight, and not every argument needs to end with a clear winner, because sometimes the real victory is choosing yourself, your sanity, and your higher ground over the temporary satisfaction of winning a shouting match. And when you learn to exit with grace, you not only calm the fire in the moment, but you teach others, without words, that you are a person who values peace over pride, wisdom over ego, and calm over chaos. And that silent lesson is more powerful than anything you could have argued into their ears. In the end, every confrontation is not truly about the other person, it is about you. About whether you will allow chaos to pull you into its storm, or whether you will stand as the calm within it. And the truth is that life will always place you in situations where people test your patience, challenge your peace, and provoke your emotions. But you must remember that your power does not lie in controlling them. It lies in mastering yourself. Because calmness is not passivity, it is strength under control. It is the courage to breathe when others are shouting, the wisdom to ground yourself when the ground feels shaky, and the grace to walk away when staying would only break you. And if you can take even one lesson from this journey, let it be this: no matter how fierce the storm of confrontation, you always have the choice to be the anchor, to be the one who does not lose themselves to anger, to be the one who transforms tension into understanding and conflict into clarity. And that choice, made again and again, will not only protect your peace but will also elevate your life, because when you master calmness, you master yourself,